Oh no. No, not that face. All right, if it's what you want. I'm too crazy about you to say no.
These two look so cute together, but only on paper. Behind the appearance of happiness and stability they projected, there was a couple facing far more issues than anyone could imagine from the outside. Both were beautiful, both successful, and both knew exactly how to play their roles within the social circles they belonged to. So you may ask, were Charlotte and Trey really a good couple? I mean, kind of. But there are plenty of reasons why they didn't end up together. So, whose fault was it? Charlotte's desperate need to get married at all cost? Or Trey's unhealthy relationship patterns with Charlotte or even with his mother? Today we're going to break down the many reasons why Charlotte and Trey's relationship was flawed and see if there was ever anything that could have saved it. From the very start, you can tell things moved too quickly. The first time we see them officially together, they're already retelling the story of how they met as if they were a long married couple. Cute, yes, but it feels more like high school puppy love rather than a grounded adult relationship. This becomes especially clear in Charlotte's decision to remain celibate until marriage, a choice that would later create one of the biggest, though not the biggest, problems between them. By making Trey wait for sex, Charlotte built up enormous expectations for the wedding night, and as we'll see later, those expectations did not work out in their favor. Unfortunately, this was just the first of many issues they would face. To better understand where most of the weight of the failure lies, we need to examine their patterns separately. Starting with...
I'm Trey.
When I think about Charlotte's first husband, Trey McDougall, one word comes to mind: man-child. And not the Sabrina Carpenter kind. While the word carries heavy and judgmental connotations, in Trey's case, it actually deserves more empathy than we might expect. Trey entered Charlotte's life as an answered prayer. He was a handsome, wealthy doctor from an old money family who literally rescued her in a moment of distress. On paper, he was exactly the kind of man that Charlotte and many straight women would dream of marrying. Beyond the surface, he was kind, cultured, and a gentleman who treated his mother well. Maybe too well. On the outside, Trey appeared to be a polished, well-educated, put-together adult. But emotionally and mentally, he was stuck in a strange version of childhood. That's not uncommon, but in Trey's case, it was so extreme that it made sustaining a relationship with him nearly impossible. And this was no exception with Charlotte. We don't know much about Trey before Charlotte, but we do know he was one of 3 siblings and that his father passed away, which left his mother as the dominant force in the family. And dominant she was because every decision Trey made had to pass through Bonnie's approval. From his girlfriends to his hobbies, even down to his preferences in food and wine. Bonnie certainly shaped every aspect of Trey's life. By constantly questioning his choices, she trained him to comply under the belief that quote-unquote mother knows best. I wouldn't be surprised if she even nudged him into becoming a doctor. At first this dynamic wasn't obvious, but when Charlotte entered the picture, the cracks began to show. 1 or 2 suggestions from Bonnie might have been excusable, but when it reached to the point of mother and son taking baths together, it was already too much. Because of his lack of agency, Trey faced a mix of physical, psychological, and symbolic setbacks. Most notably, he failed to recognize Charlotte as a sexual being, and of course, there was the glaring issue of his erectile dysfunction. Early in their relationship, Charlotte poured her energy into fixing their problems in the bedroom. Trey, although he acknowledged the issue, showed little initiative in addressing it. After their separation, however, he became obsessed with having sex with her everywhere, which temporarily solved only one of the problems. But Trey's habit of running away from his problems or pretending they never happened made this a lot more difficult than it should be. He has an extremely low tolerance for discomfort, which makes his growth slow and painful, and that is all the more evident in his interactions with Bonnie. This makes Trey a man who doesn't know how to regulate himself and express it in an unusual way.
We should separate for a while.
Alrighty.
While most people lash out at others through extreme emotions like anger, for example, he keeps all his emotions hidden and this causes him to suffer in silence. And he uses that silence as a safety cocoon that keeps him stuck in a perpetual cycle of hiding from his own development. In this unhealthy dynamic, Charlotte was indirectly positioned as Trey's mother. We see this most clearly during the therapy sessions and in the exercises meant to improve their sex life. She used conventional and unconventional ways to work around Trey's unwillingness to either perform or accept his own inadequacy, and this was incredibly exhausting for her. And of course it was. She was doing his job for him. She was trying to undo the perpetual dependency that Bonnie benefited from. According to numerous studies, the relationship with your parents can dictate the way you build relationships with other people. And although it seems that only Trey was the one depending on his mother, we can also say that Bonnie is highly dependent on Trey's attention because it makes her feel needed. And this would have caused Charlotte to inevitably always be in competition with Bonnie to be Trey's most important woman in his life. Besides this, it's worth pausing here to note one key similarity between Trey and Big. Both subscribe to the Madonna whore complex. They divide women into two categories: the soft, maternal, good women who can't be seen as sexual, and the playful, more sexually open women who can't be taken seriously. Trey's story in many ways is tragic. Despite his wealth, status, and privilege, there's an overwhelming sense that he's trapped in a permanent state of arrested development, always striving to be the good boy for his mom. Luckily, we do see some growth on and off camera, but we'll get more into that later.
This is me. I'm not a Madonna, and I'm not a whore. I'm your wife, and I'm sexual, and I love you.
I've already gone into detail about Charlotte in a video I fully dedicated to her. But Charlotte's patterns are very clear. As Miranda once pointed out, she projected her fantasy of the perfect man onto whoever she was dating at the moment, and with Trey, it was no different. He, in turn, was the kind of person who would do anything to please others, often at the expense of his own growth. Charlotte rushed into a relationship that seemed ideal with a man who seemed ideal, only to discover that even if Trey wasn't as emotionally dismissive or flaky as her past boyfriends, he came with a whole new set of issues. Ones that were just as bad, if not worse than the ones she thought she'd left behind. For starters, Trey introduced Charlotte to his mother very early in their relationship. For someone like Charlotte, this was a green flag, a sign of seriousness and commitment. Since she was determined to get married as quickly as possible, she saw it as proof that everything was working in her favor. But as we know now, what it really meant was Trey asking his mother for permission to date Charlotte. Their first meeting was less about romance and more about Bonnie calling the shots. If Charlotte had been a little more like Carrie, that relationship might have ended right there, even if Trey had told her he loved her the night before. Charlotte, however, saw Bonnie's persuasive ways as an opportunity, and they turned out to be both a blessing and a curse. She got what she wanted from her ideal man, but not in the way she expected. Essentially, she proposed to herself. If she had just waited a couple more days, still not much time but better than nothing, she would have gotten the proposal she longed for. Because Trey was going to propose. He was the type who did everything according to plan. Bonnie's plan, sure, but since he already had her approval, the proposal was inevitable. Charlotte's need to control every detail blinded her to the real issues lurking in their relationship. And here's where her own struggles come in. When she reviewed the prenup with Miranda, she was already disappointed that legal paperwork could strip away the fairy tale sheen from her marriage fantasy. This has always been Charlotte's dilemma. She knows what she wants, but what she wants is an idealized dreamlike version of reality. With Trey, she was forced to confront the truth that to get what she wanted, she needed both a stronger backbone and a more grounded perspective. When faced with reality, Charlotte often pretended everything was fine, until she couldn't do it anymore. She waited for Trey to magically develop a libido and take charge in the relationship, and when he didn't, she overcompensated, working overtime to fix problems that should have been handled by both partners. And this took a toll on her, because during this period she also developed a physical condition caused by her emotional state.
Your vagina's depressed? The mood elevator sort of corrects the imbalance.
The toll of this showed during and after the marriage. Charlotte clung to a fantasy that dismissed the most basic sensual aspects of her relationship. She had judged her previous boyfriends, and even her friends, for focusing too much on sex, only to end up with exactly what she thought she wanted. And it wasn't what she needed. Critics often point out Charlotte's inconsistency in this area. She claimed to be an idealist who would wait for the perfect man and save herself for him, but in reality, she dated and slept with men almost as much as her more liberated friends. So when it was finally time to live up to her own ideals of love, sex, and marriage, she was lost. She may have stayed with Trey longer than she should have simply because she didn't want to admit she needed sex as much as anyone else. She couldn't accept that her perfect man lacked the one quality she couldn't compromise on, which, as we later learned, wasn't the only incompatibility between them. What Charlotte didn't really want to face was that the myth of romantic love she had lived by her whole life has failed her. And now she was left with the consequences of a marriage built on fragile foundations. She wasn't the fairy tale princess waiting for her prince anymore. She had to become a real woman, one who fought to build the life she wanted in circumstances even trickier than when she was single. As a married woman, she came to a harsh realization. Life doesn't end with happily ever after. Having a ring on her face was not the end of the struggle. For her, it was only the beginning. And having a baby with him would have been the cherry on top of a silently unhappy marriage. In spite of the myriad of issues they've been facing since the beginning of their marriage, Charlotte was still adamant of getting her dream life and proposed to Trey to have a baby. Something he initially agreed to because, well, what's the normal thing to do?
What do you want to do with this room?
Or it could be a good room for a
BY?
However, this would be the final nail in the coffin of their relationship, because Trey agreed to have it, but retracted his decision soon after. They have such a different outlook on the baby issue that Trey, after the whole situation with her difficult conceiving, gave Charlotte a cardboard baby as a joke, which she, very rightfully so, found insensitive and tasteless and caused another huge fight between them. To him, it was just another thing he could ignore, but to her, it was a huge setback that would permanently change the way she approached her dream and the whole marriage. With such different perspectives on marriage and kids, Trey's slowly blooming assertiveness and Charlotte's disillusionment with this relationship, there was only one logic solution that would change both of them forever.
I want a baby. I thought that's what you wanted too.
So did I.
I don't think I should have to give that up.
You shouldn't.
So you may ask, whose fault is it? The answer is both and none at the same time. They both made a rash decision based on what was expected of them, but only Charlotte was fully aware of what their life together entailed because it's what she wanted. Trey only thought she wanted it based on the expectations of his age and gender. They were both people who made the mistake of projecting expectations onto the other, but they were genuinely good, caring people in their relationship. Trey told Charlotte many times how much he loved her and cared for her. And if it wasn't that way, he wouldn't have suggested therapy or almost given in to Charlotte's wishes to have a baby. Charlotte was also very patient towards Trey. She tried to find solutions around Trey's issues, and she did everything she could to build a life with and for Trey. In that marriage, she worked as hard as she never did before, and life not only compensated her with Trey's apartment, but also with a beautiful life with Harry. Not only that, but this relationship was a catalyst for both of them. Both Charlotte and Trey matured a lot during and after their marriage, and this brought them both a more well-rounded sense of what they want in life. For example, Trey learned how to set boundaries between what he actually wants and what is expected of him. On season 4, episode 14, after they were very clear on not wanting the same lifestyle, Trey decided to separate from Charlotte and to give her the apartment where they both lived together. And after that, he shows up for the house and garden photoshoot as a way to compensate for everything he couldn't do for Charlotte.
Trey, you don't have
No.
to.
This is important to you. I at least want to do this.
Handsome husband, beautiful wife.
On season 5, episode 5, during the divorce settlement, while Charlotte is fighting with Bonnie for the apartment Trey gave her, they get a telegram from Trey where he actually sides with Charlotte, giving her the apartment and asking Bonnie to stop meddling into their business.
Charlotte York was a wonderful wife. Stop. She did nothing wrong. Stop. Give her everything she wants. Stop. Seriously, Mother. Stop.
It was short but a definite demonstration of how much Trey has grown. These two moments, although definitive and sad, demonstrate that even if Trey loved Charlotte, he wasn't willing to settle down for a life he wasn't ready to have, and he finally put his foot down and made a choice of what was better for him, even if it wasn't for everyone around him, like Charlotte or his mother Bonnie, for example. And speaking of Charlotte, she discovered a lot of sobering realities in her life that would break her fantasy of marriage, but would help her build something better because it's real. She found out that her Prince Charming was far from a dream man she envisioned, but this acknowledgement helped her discover someone that would give her everything she ever wanted. During the marriage, she found out she had reproductive problems which would make it almost impossible for her to get pregnant. But this also helped her pivot into a direction where she can get the life she wanted, even with the setbacks she was facing. This relationship destroyed Charlotte's definitions around love, family, and relationship, but that's a good thing, because this way she could build them back in a way that was based on who she is and not an idyllic fairy tale. It helped Charlotte have a more grounded concept of what it means to have a committed relationship, and to know better the kind of people who can actually give it to her. So to sum it up, this marriage was a false start for both of them, but it was helpful to understand and reaffirm what they really want from life. And if taking one or two steps in the wrong direction can help us get a better outcome than the one we envision, maybe it is worth it for all of us to stray back, because maybe that way we can get a better outcome than the one we envision for ourselves.
Such a player. I don't know. Maybe things will work out between them.
And that's all for today. Once again, thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Bye-bye!